I had always thought of myself as logical, grounded, the type of person who wouldn't fall for pranks or gimmicks. That evening, however, I was about to discover how fragile that confidence really was. It started innocuously enough. I was hanging out with a friend I trusted, someone who had always teased me playfully but never crossed lines. Or so I thought. She had this calm, soothing way of speaking, her tone almost hypnotic when she wanted to get your attention. I didn't notice it at first, because I laughed at her jokes, brushed off her suggestions, and assumed everything was normal. But then she brought it up, skirts. "Have you ever tried wearing a skirt?" she asked casually, as though it were the most natural question in the world. I chuckled, shaking my head. "No way. That's not really me." She smiled, but there was a glint in her eyes I hadn't seen before. "What if I told you it could feel amazing? That it could change how you move, how you stand, how people look at you?" Her words were light, teasing, but there was a rhythm to them that caught my attention. I laughed nervously, trying to ignore the strange flutter in my stomach. But the more she spoke, the more her tone seemed to weave into my mind. Each sentence repeated itself, not audibly, but almost as if it were echoing inside my head. "Just try it," she murmured. "Slip one on. Feel the fabric, feel how it hugs you. You'll see, it's not what you expect." I paused, the words echoing inside me. There was a tension, a pull, something I couldn't quite name. Against my better judgment, I found myself standing, following her to the pile of clothes she had laid out. A skirt, soft and flowing, lay neatly folded. My hands shook slightly as I reached for it. It was absurd, I thought. This was ridiculous. But still, my fingers brushed the fabric. The moment it touched my skin, a strange awareness surged through me. I felt lighter, strangely delicate, almost exposed. My reflection in the mirror startled me. My body looked the same, yet somehow the skirt changed everything. My stance, my posture, even the way I breathed. It was like stepping into a different rhythm of life, one I wasn't accustomed to. She encouraged me softly. "Move. Just a few steps. Feel how it sways. See how it changes your walk." I obeyed, almost automatically. The first step was awkward, but then, it wasn't. There was a fluidity, a grace, a subtle shift in the way I carried myself. It wasn't vanity, it was new. Exciting. Terrifying. I could feel the tension in my body melting, replaced by a strange thrill I couldn't explain. I caught sight of her watching me. Her smile was calm, almost serene, yet filled with something I couldn't name. And then it hit me, this wasn't just a suggestion. This wasn't just a game. There was a force in her words, in the way she spoke, that tugged at my mind, bending my will slowly, irresistibly. By the time I removed the skirt, I realized I wanted to leave it on. I wanted to feel that lightness again, that shift, that control slipping away and leaving something else in its place. I don't know," I said, voice trembling slightly. "It feels strange." She leaned closer, voice soft, hypnotic. "Strange can be good. It can be freeing. It can be fun. Let yourself enjoy it. Don't resist. Not tonight." I looked at myself in the mirror again. The person staring back wasn't fully me. Not yet. But a part of me, a part one didn't know existed, was awake, aware, and curious. That night, I went to bed still wearing the skirt. I couldn't stop thinking about it. The rhythm of walking, the sway of fabric, the subtle power it gave me in vulnerability, I was hooked. And that's when the real shock began. I didn't realize it yet, but this was only the start. This wasn't just a dare or a moment of curiosity. Something in me had shifted irrevocably. Something had been awakened that wouldn't let go. The next morning, sunlight spilled into my room, but I barely noticed. My mind was tangled with thoughts from the previous night, and the skirt I had worn still clung to me like a second skin. Not physically, but mentally. Every movement, every step, carried that strange awareness, that subtle rhythm that made my body respond differently. I got ready for school, or what I used to consider normal. Pulling on a skirt felt automatic, almost as if my hands had a mind of their own. I hesitated only for a second, heart pounding as I considered my reflection in the mirror. The skirt swayed naturally around my legs, the hem brushing lightly against my thighs. There was a thrill in the sensation, a quiet excitement that mingled uncomfortably with embarrassment. Stepping outside, the world seemed sharper, more vivid. The sidewalk beneath my heels clicked in rhythm with my racing heartbeat. Every glance from passers-by felt exaggerated, every whisper in the distance sounded louder. I tried to tell myself it was normal, people just noticed clothes, but deep down I knew it was different. I wasn't just wearing a skirt. Something inside me was compelled to be in it, and the hypnotic suggestion lingered like a shadow over every thought. At school, the disruption hit immediately. Friends called out to me, their greetings layered with curiosity. Some smirked, others stared outright, and a few whispered to each other as I passed. Every reaction sent waves of heat through me, but not purely from embarrassment. There was a strange thrill interlaced with anxiety. "Whoa! Nice skirt," one friend said, a teasing grin tugging at their lips. I laughed nervously, adjusting the fabric. My fingers hesitated over the hem, almost as if I needed reassurance that it was still there. Throughout the day, every movement became conscious, deliberate. Walking down crowded hallways, I felt every eye on me, or imagined I did, and each sway of the skirt amplified the awareness. The hypnotic pull was stronger than I could resist. My thoughts constantly circled around it. I shouldn't like this, but I do. I can't stop noticing how it moves. Even mundane activities became a challenge. Sitting at my desk, bending to pick up a dropped pen, or walking to the locker triggered an internal struggle. The skirt seemed to dictate the way I moved. I shifted my legs, adjusted my posture, aware of the subtle thrill it gave me. The line between coercion and desire blurred, leaving me confused, embarrassed, and strangely exhilarated at the same time. By lunch, whispers became more pointed. Someone nudged another, pointing subtly. "Check him out," I heard faintly. My stomach twisted. I tried to laugh it off, but there was a sharp awareness that I couldn't shake. Every glance felt like judgment. Yet, at the same time, there was a pulse of pride, a small, forbidden pleasure in being noticed. Even teachers noticed something different. The way I walked into class, the confidence, or was it compulsion, in my steps, caught attention. A teacher's raised brow, a subtle comment about appearance, made me want to shrink, but I couldn't stop myself from feeling a strange validation as well. By the end of the day, I felt both exhausted and electrified. The hypnotic pull wasn't just in my mind, it was in my body, my movements, my very presence. Every encounter, every glance, had forced me into a dual awareness, the shame of exposure and the thrill of transformation. When I got home, I tried to change, to take off the skirt and return to normal, but my hands hesitated. The hypnotic suggestion lingered, soft but insistent. Wear it. Feel it. Don't resist. I froze in front of the mirror, skirt clinging lightly to my legs, heartbeat quickening. The tug wasn't just external, it was internal, a strange blend of compulsion and curiosity that had embedded itself into my consciousness. I realized then that daily life had been irrevocably altered. What was once normal, walking, sitting, interacting with people, had become a battlefield between the familiar and the hypnotically imposed. And yet, within that battle, there was a spark, a realization that the skirt, though a symbol of control, also carried a strange sense of empowerment. By the evening, my mind was a whirlwind. I replayed the day in fragments, the way people had looked, the whispers, the subtle thrills, the embarrassment. And with every replay, the compulsion grew stronger, the internal tug more undeniable. It wasn't just about wearing a skirt anymore. It was about navigating a world that now felt different, unfamiliar, and strangely exhilarating. I sank onto the bed, skirt still in place, feeling the tug in my mind, the sway of fabric against my legs, the subtle pulse of power in vulnerability. Sleep came fitfully, with fragments of the day repeating themselves, reinforcing the hypnotic grip. The world outside might not have known the extent of the change, but inside, I was already living a life I hadn't imagined, one step, one sway, one heartbeat at a time. The house was quiet, the kind of stillness that made every creak, every sigh of the floorboards feel amplified. I had locked the door, drawn the curtains, and stepped into a space where I could be completely alone with the strange pull that had taken over my mind. The hypnotic suggestion that had started as a casual game now lingered like a shadow over my thoughts, and here, in the solitude of my own room, it became impossible to ignore. I stood in front of the mirror, skirt flowing lightly around my legs, feeling the subtle weight and movement of fabric. My fingers traced the hem absent-mindedly, almost reverently. It was more than a piece of clothing now, it was a trigger, a key to sensations I didn't fully understand. Every sway of the skirt against my thighs sent shivers up my spine. My reflection seemed alive in a way it hadn't before, each blink, tilt of the head, and shift of posture drawing attention to curves and lines I had never considered important. I sat on the edge of the bed, letting the skirt fall naturally over my knees, and began to explore the way it influenced my movements. Simple actions, a stretch, a reach for a book, even the way I crossed my legs, felt different. The hypnotic suggestion whispered in my mind, feel it. Enjoy it. Move as you are meant to move. Each command was subtle but insistent, and each time I obeyed, a thrill coursed through me that was equal parts fear and fascination. I began experimenting with different poses in front of the mirror. Standing, sitting, leaning slightly, tilting my shoulders. Each adjustment changed the reflection, highlighting a version of myself I had barely recognized. The skirt didn't just alter my appearance, it altered my awareness, making every gesture feel deliberate, seductive, and impossibly graceful. I laughed quietly at the absurdity of it, but the sound felt different, lighter, almost musical. Reaching for a pair of shoes I had left nearby, I slipped into them, feeling the added height change my gait. The mirror reflected a new rhythm in my steps, a sway in my hips that felt both foreign and natural. I moved across the room slowly, testing how the skirt responded to each motion. The hypnotic influence seemed to amplify with every step, guiding my movements, dictating my posture, and subtly reshaping my confidence. I experimented with more than just movement. Sitting at my desk, I tried adjusting my voice, softening the tone, elongating certain words, letting laughter rise more lightly. Every small adjustment felt like unlocking a new layer of myself, one that existed between hesitation and boldness. The hypnotic pull made it impossible to resist fully inhabiting this persona, and I began to sense the power in that surrender, the thrill in letting the suggestion guide me rather than resisting it. I moved to the wardrobe, trying on different skirts I had hastily collected over the past few days. Each fabric, each cut, brought its own sensation, silk brushing against skin, denim pressing with structure, chiffon swaying like liquid around my legs. I experimented with colors, textures, and lengths, observing the reflection and noting the subtle shifts in my body language that each piece provoked. Some skirts made me feel delicate, almost fragile, while others gave a sense of dominance and control. By late evening, the experimentation had become immersive. I practiced walking along the narrow corridor, feeling how each step influenced my balance, posture, and awareness. I practiced sitting at the dining table, adjusting the skirt over my knees, perfecting gestures as I reached for a glass or a plate. Every small motion became a study in transformation, a meditation in motion, and the hypnotic pull guided me seamlessly, almost invisibly, through each experiment. Then came the deeper exercises, posture, expression, and the subtle art of presence. Standing before the mirror, I practiced lifting my chin just slightly, adjusting my shoulders, elongating my neck. I practiced small smiles, fleeting glances, and the art of being observed without fear. The hypnotic suggestion whispered encouragement, drawing me into each exercise with an intensity that blurred the line between curiosity and compulsion. Hours passed as minutes, and by the time the night deepened, I had explored countless nuances of this new self. Every sway, gesture, and expression had been tested, refined, and internalized. My body felt different, not in shape, but in rhythm, awareness, and response. The skirt had become more than clothing, it was an extension of the hypnotic influence, a constant reminder of the new version of myself that existed only in private but longed for the world beyond. Finally, sitting cross-legged on the bed, skirt draped naturally over my legs, I realized the depth of the transformation. The hypnotic suggestion was no longer just a whisper, it was a presence in itself, shaping not only my movements but my thoughts, desires, and attention. I felt a quiet exhilaration, tinged with the tiniest hint of fear, knowing that this experiment was far from over. Tomorrow would bring public spaces, social interaction, and challenges I had yet to confront. But for now, I was fully immersed in the exploration, savoring every movement, every sensation, every reflection in the mirror. The morning sunlight spilled through the blinds, soft and golden, as if encouraging me to step into the world I had been secretly shaping behind closed doors. Today, I wouldn't just experiment in the privacy of my room. I would test this new version of myself in public, among strangers whose eyes could pierce the protective veil of solitude. The thought both thrilled and terrified me, but the hypnotic pull that had guided me for days now felt like a current I could no longer resist. I dressed carefully, selecting a skirt that flowed just enough to sway with each step. The fabric brushed against my legs, a constant reminder of the delicate, yet undeniable power it lent me. I paired it with a blouse that accentuated my shoulders and a subtle pair of heels I had grown accustomed to. Each choice was deliberate, a rehearsal in confidence and grace. Even as I adjusted the skirt at my waist, I felt the familiar tug of the hypnotic suggestion: walk, move, be seen, don't resist. Stepping outside, the air was crisp, filled with the chatter of people beginning their day. Each step on the pavement echoed slightly louder in my mind, every glance from passers-by magnified. I felt hyper-aware of the sway of the skirt, the rhythm of my stride, the subtle curve of my posture. For the first time, I wasn't hiding, but I wasn't fully comfortable either. There was a tension, an intoxicating balance between fear and exhilaration. The first encounter came quickly. A group of students laughed nearby, and I felt their eyes on me. I kept walking, adjusting the rhythm of my steps to the natural sway of the skirt. Their laughter felt lighter as it passed, and I realized that the power of movement was subtle yet undeniable. I was commanding attention without trying, a quiet magnetism fueled by the hypnotic influence that now guided me effortlessly. At the cafe I frequented, I entered with a cautious smile. The barista's raised brow didn't intimidate me, it was merely acknowledgement. I chose a seat by the window, letting sunlight illuminate the skirt's movement as I crossed my legs delicately. Each gesture felt rehearsed yet spontaneous, like a dance I had learned without realizing it. Patrons glanced, some curiously, others appreciatively, and I found myself responding naturally. Smiling, tilting my head, adjusting posture. Each micro-interaction strengthened the sense of self I had been nurturing in private. Walking through the park later, I observed the small, unconscious power the skirt gave me. Children paused momentarily to stare, joggers offered fleeting smiles, and a few passers-by looked away, seemingly unsure of what they had noticed. Instead of embarrassment, a subtle thrill coursed through me. I had once been invisible in this environment, blending into the background. Now, every movement carried presence, every sway demanded recognition. By afternoon, I had discovered new dimensions of public confidence. I experimented with gestures, a slight tilt of the head, a playful adjustment of the skirt, a casual glance over the shoulder. Each small action elicited subtle reactions from strangers, reinforcing the hypnotic suggestion and guiding my body and mind toward a more empowered version of myself. The balance between vulnerability and control fascinated me. I was exposed, yet commanding. Embarrassed, yet undeniably confident. Encounters weren't always smooth. A group of teenagers made snide remarks, and my initial reaction was panic. But I remembered the hypnotic cues, the suggestion that had shaped my movements for days. Instead of shrinking, I lifted my chin slightly, allowed a soft, confident smile, and walked past. Their laughter faded behind me, and I realized the power wasn't in avoiding attention. It was in how I owned it. The evening brought an even greater challenge. A social gathering, a friend's small party, demanded full engagement in a public, semi-crowded setting. I stepped through the door, skirt swaying naturally, and immediately felt the spectrum of eyes. Each glance, each subtle observation, tested my internalized confidence. And yet, the hypnotic influence whispered in my mind, be present. Move naturally. Enjoy it. I navigated conversations, my gestures deliberate yet fluid, my laughter light and musical. For the first time, I noticed the subtle shift in how others responded, not with judgment, but with interest, intrigue, and respect. The skirt, once a symbol of compulsion, had transformed into a tool of empowerment. Each movement, each sway, was a declaration: I was no longer hiding. I belonged in this body, in this persona, and I was ready to explore it without apology. By nightfall, as I walked home through the quiet streets, I felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The hypnotic pull that had once felt like coercion had become a guide, teaching me grace, presence, and the thrill of being fully seen. The journey from private experimentation to public embodiment was intoxicating. I had discovered that the skirt wasn't just clothing. It was a conduit, a bridge between internal curiosity and external confidence, fear and empowerment, restraint and liberation. Sitting in the soft glow of my room later that night, I reflected on the day. The world had been both a stage and a classroom. I had tested boundaries, confronted fear, and embraced exposure. Every interaction, every glance, every step had been a lesson in transformation. And deep down, I knew that this was only the beginning. The hypnotic influence was no longer just a game. It had reshaped my perception of myself, my body, and my presence in the world.